Good evening. It's Dr. K. This is week 8, and I'd like to talk to you about the team project. The templates that you're going to be working with are for executing, monitoring, and controlling, and closing. And I wanted to give you a few insights about those as you're working. I've pulled up a document from the PMBOK guide, figure 3-5 in chapter 3. And what it does is talk about how information flows across the project. And because the documents that you're working with are information flow documents, it might help to look. So in week 6, you completed your project management plan, and that's down here where you have a project management plan. So starting from that, you have planned to do a whole bunch of work. And you know how long it will take and who's going to do it and all sorts of things, but you haven't actually done the work yet. So we go up to project execution, and that's where we actually get the work done, and we document the results of that. So if we started a task on Wednesday and we finished it on Friday, the 21st of January, that's the type of information that we call work performance data. It's very raw. It just said that we started and finished on this date, and we logged X number of hours to the project. The next thing that we do is go back and look at the plan. And we say, okay, well, if it actually took us 2 days, and we had planned for it to take 3 days, yay, we're ahead. And so we want to that's work performance information, that we're ahead on this particular task by 1 hour. And so when we get into work performance reporting, that's where you're really going to figure out, well, who needs to know about this and what do they need to know? So at a very high level, they just need to know that we're 1 day ahead on the project, for example. So we've gone from very detailed data to detailed data compared to a detailed plan, and come up with a summary of what that means to the project. So let's see how that plays out in your document. The first thing that document is number 14, and it's talking about work performance data, so that raw data. So a project that we were working on before was getting adult classes, adult education for 15 students, and we needed to go out and recruit the students, and we needed a plan for how we were going to recruit them. So the work performance information that we have is we had some information about how we would tell whether we'd written a good plan or a bad plan. We had a start date planned and a finish date, a duration. As we actually did the work, we noticed that we had one missing section, but that got fixed. And we actually logged 13 hours. And there was a meeting that was attended by 5 people. By themselves, work performance data is not terrifically useful. But if we go back and we look at work performance information, that's where we take the raw data and make it usable. So we can compare work performance to actual performance. So we know that the technical performance matched. The start and finish dates matched. The actual matched the plan. The duration actual matched the plan duration. But defects, there was one defect and that got fixed, and so that's different from the plan. We didn't plan to make any defects. It's different in that there were 13 hours versus 15 hours logged. And logging why that happened is often very important. And then it's different because we expected to have a meeting attended by 5 people, but we figured out that we only needed 1 person from student services instead of 2. And so when we summarize that up and say, what does that mean overall for the project plan? We say that this deliverable was completed at $80 under the budget of $600, $80 under budget due to efficiencies. Let's go on to change request. Change request is helping you understand that when you decide that you need to change the plan in a significant way, you don't just do it. You actually go through a change control process. So what we're asking to do here is to change our class size for our pilot class from 15 students down to 10 students. And we're doing it because of lower enrollment, and we can still meet our business objectives with fewer students. And it's very important for managers to explain what will happen if the change is not approved, and then what else we considered as alternatives. And we considered delaying the class start date until we got more students, but we explained why that's a bad idea. And we said that we also considered just skipping the pilot and going directly into production classes, but that's risky. So here's the analysis of the requested change. And that consists of actually going through and saying what it is that we're changing and what the impact is going to be on the schedule, on the cost, on the contractual agreements, etc. Let's go down to the change control log. This is simply a way of logging. So for our change that we just requested, we summarize it here. And actually the resolution was that it was approved. I'm going to just say that. So the next part talks about formal deliverables, acceptance. And what happens in real life, especially in informal situations, is that I say it's done, and when I hand it off to you, you say, well, it's done, but it wasn't really what I wanted. And it goes on, and the project never gets finished, and there's ongoing conflict. And what deliverable acceptance forms are meant to do is say, it's done, it was completed to my satisfaction, and here's what was done well, and here's how what we looked at to make sure that we both understood it was done. The next item is a tracking Gantt. And a Gantt is actually one of those crazy looking charts that shows all of the activities for a project or all the milestones. And in this case, all we're doing is saying that this particular deliverable was planned for 5 days to start January 21st and end January 21st. And it actually did start on the right day, and it actually did end on the right day, so we have no variance. Let me show you how I work on things. For example, the quality control card for an individual metric. The first thing that I do is go up to the planning for an individual metric and grab that information and paste it in right here, because it won't hurt anybody to have it, and it will certainly help. And that way I can just go ahead and copy and paste what was my quality metric and how was it measured, and we can go through and get that information from the quality activities. So how it was actually measured by comparison with 2 other plans. And then who measured it? It was the the community outreach coordinator and the executive director. And how did they measure it? We would just go back up and find the dates. And if they used any tools such as document compare, they might actually document compare is a bad example, but perhaps they used kind of a checklist to see that all of the pieces that were meant to be there in that recruitment plan were actually there. Then we can go on to human resource management and just talk about staff assignments. And remember that when you go out and you do the planning, you don't necessarily assign a person by name. You decide that you need a project manager and that that person needs to spend 30 hours a week on it. But what could have, or needs to spend a certain amount of time per month on it. But you know, it's entirely possible that you had one project manager for the first part, and then you had another project manager for the second part, and that took over. And so during this time, you had another person taking over the project management for this project. And that's really what this is saying, is who actually was assigned to a particular role and how many hours did they put against that role in any particular time period. For me, the answer for staff development is almost always pizza parties. Teams appreciate pizzas, and if we can do a celebration and get everybody together, it's just one of the best ways to do lessons learned, for example. I'm not going to go over the status report because I believe that that's pretty self-explanatory. And the tricky part about a status report is simply that you have to make a decision about what day it is. So if you're at the end of month 4 in a 6-month project, your status report is going to look differently than if you're at the end of the project. So pick a particular day and then do your whole status report based on that time frame. And finally, we have closing procurement, which is 22. And so that's simply going through, we had a contract with a seller, and we've had certain information from the seller, and I once again just went up and grabbed the information from the plan and put it right down here so that it was available to look through. And these are pretty straightforward items. Finally, we've got issues. And an issue is something that a decision has to be made before you can really go forward with parts of the project. So it has to be something that if you don't decide, the project will start suffering delays from it at the very least, or will start having other problems. So here's an issue: too few students were registered. That could delay our schedule or totally cancel the project. And what we decided to do was meet to assign, get a team together to develop alternatives. And what we did for resolution is we sent it off and did a formal change request so that we changed from 15 students being registered to 10. And finally, we have the closing process groups, and I won't spend much time on those either because they're pretty self-explanatory. And if you find yourself having to just make up things that don't help, just be very brief on these for sure. Take some time on the lessons learned. What do you think this project team learned during this? What would they do differently? And what were any major variances? And talk a little bit about those team dynamics and how they worked. Finally, we have you closing out the procurements and the contracts, and you're done. I hope that was helpful. Use your PMBOK guide to go through and look at particular areas and see what is really going on here, or look at Schwalbe. And let me know if you're having questions or concerns. Thanks.